We're remodeling right now. We can't have guests. That was my father. The week I lost everything, my husband, my job, my house, and the savings I'd kept since I was 22. I called him from a Walmart parking lot in Charlotte, North Carolina. I asked for one room, one night. My sister Lauren moved into that room 3 days later. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I drove back to my Honda Civic and slept the first of 19 nights with a blanket I bought at the same Walmart. 4 years later, last Tuesday, my father called me back. He'd been crying for 2 minutes when I picked up. I had 3 words for him. My name is Bethany Hollister. I'm 39, and what was in his desk drawer the whole time is the story I came here to tell. If you're already feeling what I'm telling you, please take a second to tap, like, and subscribe. This story is the kind that lands harder if we listen to it together. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where in the world you are right now. My name is Bethany Hollister. This is the story of what my father wrote in a notebook he thought no one would ever read. Let's go back to November 2021. But before November, you should know where I sat at the Sunday table. The Hollister Sunday dinner happened in the same dining room every week of my childhood. Providence Road, Charlotte, a Victorian my father bought in 1989 with money from his father's tobacco settlement. Patricia served from the kitchen. Earl sat at the head. Lauren sat to his right, on the chair with the curved back. I sat at the end, by the kitchen door, where the draft was. I was 16 the one time I asked if I could switch with Lauren. We were studying the same chapter of Genesis at First Baptist that month. I thought maybe my father would let me sit closer to the conversation. "Let me check with your father," Patricia said. She walked to the kitchen. She came back 40 seconds later with a serving spoon she didn't need. "Daddy says we don't move the table." I sat by the draft until I left for college. I learned to angle my plate so the cold air didn't get under it. I didn't know yet that, "Let me check with your father," was a sentence she was reading. Thanksgiving 2017. I was 31, already a regional director at Marriott, already wearing the watch Eric had given me on our second anniversary, which I would lose 4 years later in a divorce settlement that swallowed everything I had built. Between the meal and the pumpkin pie, my father pulled a brown leather notebook from his shirt pocket. It was about the size of a postcard. The leather was soft from 20 years of handling. He uncapped a yellow pencil and began to write. Patricia cleared plates. Lauren texted under the table. I poured coffee from the pot in the sideboard. I thought he was working on Sunday's lesson. He served as a deacon at First Baptist. He often did sermon notes between courses. He always wrote in pencil. I asked once, when I was 12, why pencil? He said, "Because I might be wrong." He wrote for 11 minutes. That visit, Pastor Aldridge was at our table. He was 68 then, slow-moving, the kind of man who looked at a serving dish the way other men looked at the sky. When Earl asked him to bless the meal, Pastor Aldridge folded his napkin and put it under the edge of his plate. "You bless what's on this table tonight, Earl. I'm just visiting." Earl blessed it. Patricia didn't look up. The notebook went back in his shirt pocket. I would not see it again for 4 years. My UNC Charlotte graduation was in May of 2008. I was 22. I had a job offer from a boutique hotel downtown. Front desk manager, $11 an hour, full benefits. Patricia took 93 photos. She told me she'd already chosen a frame. Earl came to the ceremony. He left at the reception because Lauren's high school baseball coach wanted to talk to him about a scholarship rumor. The framed photo hung on the wall above my old bed for 3 months. By Christmas, it had been taken down. Patricia called it the holiday season redecoration. It didn't go back up in January. It didn't go back up in February. I noticed in 2010, 2 years later, that the frame was face down in the garage behind a rolled-up area rug. I turned it face up. The next visit, it was face down again. I asked Patricia where she planned to hang it. She paused at the sink. She used a clean dish towel to dry her hands twice. Daddy and I are still deciding the best place to feature it. I stopped putting it face up. The wall kept the hook. 9 weeks. That's how long it took. September 2021. Eric Bradshaw filed for divorce. No fault, no warning. 3 lines in an email from his attorney's office. The prenup his father had drafted in 2014 protected everything Eric owned before the wedding, including the house in Myers Park, where we'd lived for 6 years. The house I had spent $120,000 renovating with savings from my second promotion. The prenup classified my renovation contributions as gifts to the marital estate. My attorney, William Tate, read me that clause out loud in his office and stopped at the word gifts. I'm sorry, Bethany. I'm going to have to ask you something. Do you have anyone? Family? I'm fine. Thank you. I lost my $45,000 401k to offset against the house equity. I paid $25,000 in legal fees and joint debt. The math came out to $190,000 of value. Evaporated. On the 8th of November, Marriott Regional Restructuring eliminated my position. 11 years compressed into 1 cardboard banker's box. A nameplate, 3 framed certifications. A pen set someone had given me at my 10-year anniversary. An unsigned thank you card from the executive housekeeping team. Security walked me out at 4 in the afternoon. I sat in the parking deck for 40 minutes before I could turn the key. A week later, a foreclosure notice arrived on the rental property I owned separately. The tenant had stopped paying in July. I'd covered the mortgage from my savings until the savings stopped covering anything. By the 18th of November, I had a Honda Civic, a banker's box, and a phone with 31% battery. I drove to the Walmart on Independence Boulevard at 4 o'clock that afternoon. I parked between a Ford F-150 and an empty cart corral. I sat with my hands on the wheel for 40 minutes. I called my mother at 4:51. She picked up on the 5th ring. Mom, I need to ask if I can come home for a little while. A small intake of breath, then her hold music tone, the one she used at potlucks when someone asked if the casserole had nuts. Hold on, honey. Let me check with your father. I heard the kitchen radio. I heard the dishwasher cycling. I waited 3 minutes. 3 minutes later, my father got on the phone. Hi, sweetheart. Your mother said you're between things. I told him briefly. No tears. The job, the house, the divorce, the rental. I asked for 1 room. I asked for 1 night. I said I would not stay long. He was quiet for about 4 seconds. Well, here's the difficulty. We're remodeling right now. We can't have guests. I waited for him to say something else. He didn't. Okay, Dad, I understand. We'll keep you in prayer, sweetheart. The line clicked. I sat with the phone in my lap. The McDonald's bag on the passenger seat had gone cold. I had bought the Quarter Pounder 26 minutes earlier with the last $14 in my checking account. The cheese had set against the paper. I could see it through the grease spot. I didn't cry. I drove across the parking lot to the darker corner near the cart corral, and I parked between a maroon Tahoe and an older Buick. I didn't know yet that the renovation he was describing had been listed on Zillow for 11 days. 3 days later, Instagram chimed at me through the cracked windshield. Lauren had posted a photo. My old bedroom, freshly painted sage green. A new headboard in walnut, white linen pillows, a faux fur throw that cost more than my last grocery run. Back where I belong. Mom's been wanting to redo this room for years. 67 likes. A heart from Aunt Reba in South Carolina. A comment from Lauren's husband, Cole Cross, the assistant pastor at First Baptist. Lucky us. I zoomed in. Above the new headboard, just below the crown molding, was a single small wall hook. It had a tiny imperfection at the base where the screw had been driven through a finishing nail by mistake. The same wall hook that had held my UNC Charlotte graduation photo for 3 months in 2008. The frame had simply been swapped. The wall kept the hook. I locked my phone. I did not unlock it again until day 11, when the Zillow alert came in. Walmart parking lot. The first night. 11:14 p.m. I had moved the car to the spot near the cart corral because the overhead light there was broken and I would not be visible from the main road. I had not reclined the seat. I sat upright with my hands flat on my thighs. The dome light wouldn't quite turn off. Some loose wire in the door. It made a small halo above my left shoulder that I could not shut down. At 1:30 in the morning, an older blue Buick pulled into the spot 2 over. A woman in a brown parka adjusted her side mirror. She glanced toward my windshield. She pretended she didn't see me. I pretended back. That was the kindness. By the 3rd night, I knew the schedule of every security guard on shift. By the 7th, I knew 6 other cars. Night 11, November 28th. I had a can of Campbell's chicken noodle and a plastic spoon I'd taken from a marathon station. I had not heated anything in 11 days. I ate the soup cold, slowly, so it would last. The spoon was a beige color you only see on plastic. Mid-bite, my phone pinged. Zillow auto alert, Charlotte real estate, renovation listings. The top result was 3142 Providence Road. I read the headline twice. Recently renovated guest suite, perfect for adult children visiting home. Listed 11 days ago. I clicked into the listing. The photos were of my old bedroom, the one I'd asked to come home to, the one Lauren had posted on Instagram 3 days after my call. The realtor's note at the bottom said, "Owner, keeping in family, listed for valuation purposes." The room had been finished before I asked for it. That was the only thing I learned that night. Night 19. 6:30 in the morning. A soft knock on the driver's side window. A woman in a wool coat, with hair the color of an old penny. Late 50s, a red plaid thermos in one hand, a small paper bag in the other. She didn't smile. "I work the laundromat across the street. I've watched you for 3 nights. I made you breakfast, if you want it." I didn't want it. I wanted to disappear into the dashboard. I took the bag and the thermos. She walked back to a Ford Taurus, climbed in, drove off without looking back at me. The egg sandwich was on a Kaiser roll. The coffee was black and so hot it had fogged the inside of the thermos cap. I drank it in 3 swallows and sat very still for a long time. She didn't tell me her name until the next morning. By that night, she had given me a key. The laundromat had a small front desk with a plexiglass window. Her cousin owned the building. She ran the desk 3 afternoons a week. She had been a paralegal in Mecklenburg County for 22 years before her own divorce in 2018. The year, she said, her husband decided to trade up, and her credit decided to follow him. She had a basement apartment in her own house. 700 square feet, separate entrance, 1 window above grade. Her last tenant had smelled like cigarettes. She had kept it empty for 8 months, waiting for someone who didn't. Her name was Doreen Whitlock. She was 58. We talked for 20 minutes that first afternoon. Not about my family, about the Marriott pension I was about to forfeit because of how the severance had been structured. About what my mother had said on the phone. I didn't repeat the line about remodeling. I didn't have to. Doreen folded a towel from the dryer pile and looked at me through the cleanest part of the plexiglass. "Honey, have you stopped trying to make them love you yet?" I didn't answer her. She didn't expect me to, but the question sat in the Civic with me for the rest of the day. December 17th. The basement had its own door at the side of the house, down 4 concrete steps. The lock was new. The light bulb in the stairwell was new. The smell was clean, a little like lemon, a little like the inside of a hardware store. The room was empty, except for a folding mattress on the floor, a clean blue blanket folded at the foot, a single brass key on a small folded paper towel, an electric kettle plugged into the wall outlet, and 2 ceramic mugs sitting side by side on the kitchenette counter. A handwritten note next to the kettle. Sleep. Tomorrow you start. I slept 10 hours. I had not slept that long in 3 months. Doreen put a second mug out, but I drank from both for a week before I asked her why. She said, "Because the day you have a friend, you'll have a mug ready." January 2022. I started walking the Mecklenburg County foreclosure courthouse listings. I was looking for pattern. Marriott had trained me to find pattern. 73% of the forced sale residential properties over the prior 6 months had been single occupied by women in midlife. Some divorced, some widowed. Some, like me, lost a job during a regional restructuring at exactly the wrong week of the year. I drafted a 1-page concept on a legal pad in Doreen's kitchen. Buy small REO properties. Rent to women in transition at 30% below market. No security deposit, 6-month leases with quiet renewal. I needed a name. I had spent 11 nights in a parking lot before the first kindness. I had crossed a threshold none of those women had wanted to cross. I called it Threshold. Doreen read the draft. She set it back down on the table. She said, "I want to be your first employee. Not yet, but soon." 3 days later, a green metal tin appeared on the basement steps. Butter cookies inside, a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. From one threshold woman to another. "I want to be your first tenant." Why? Yvette Calhoun was 44, Doreen's friend from a Wednesday night Al-Anon group. Yvette had spent 6 months in a domestic violence shelter on East Sugar Creek Road. She had 2 trash bags of clothes and no security deposit. I had $11,000 in a credit union account. I needed $13,000 for a down payment. I had 8 weeks. I made a list. March 2022. I found a 950-square-foot bungalow in Hidden Valley, Charlotte. Bank-owned, 4 months on the market, dropped from $78,000 to $52,000. I offered $52,000. Self-Help Credit Union in Durham, a state institution that specializes in impact lending, financed $39,000 at a rate I could carry. Doreen co-signed as guarantor on the supplemental small business application. We closed on March 28th. Threshold Holdings. LC was formed January 5th, 2022. Yvette moved in on April 12th with 2 trash bags of clothes and a green metal tin of butter cookies she rebaked from scratch the same morning. She paid $625 a month in rent. The market rate was $900. I was still living in Doreen's basement. In October of 2022, I mailed a birthday card to my father. I put $50 inside. I wrote in pencil because he wrote in pencil, "Happy birthday, Dad. I'm doing all right." The envelope came back 5 weeks later. The handwriting on the front was his. Return to sender. Recipient refused. I sent the card because I wasn't yet who I was about to become. Compliance is a habit before it's a choice. By the end of 2023, Threshold owned 7 houses. Doreen was officially Director of Operations and had a salary. Ray Whitlow, Doreen's nephew, was our contractor. A woman named Carla, who had come to us from the East Sugar Creek shelter, was the tenant coordinator. We had 14 tenants. None of them had paid a security deposit. 11 of them had been one paycheck from a parking lot when they signed. In September of 2023, my sister Lauren Hollister Cross married Cole Cross at First Baptist Church, Charlotte. I received a save the date in the mail and no verbal invitation. I did not attend. Lauren's wedding photos circulated through the church community for weeks. I was not mentioned in any caption. I was not mentioned in the toast. At the reception, my father introduced Cole's family to the parishioners by saying, "We're so glad to gain a son." He did not say the word daughter. Pastor Aldridge did not officiate. That fall, my father told a parishioner at potluck, I heard this from Doreen's cousin's wife, who heard it from the parishioner's sister-in-law, that Pastor Aldridge had stopped attending potlucks. "Some men get soft in their later years," my father said. I did not know yet that Pastor Aldridge had stopped attending because of what he had read. Christmas Eve, 2023. My mother left a voicemail. "Daddy and I would love it if you came for Christmas dinner, honey. Lauren misses you. We have so much to catch up on." I deleted it without listening twice. That was the first time I chose without redeliberating. By the end of 2024, Threshold owned 14 houses. We had 43 women in our system, current and former. We employed 9 people, all but 2 of them women who had once lived in one of our houses. I bought a small modular office in Noda, north of downtown. I moved out of Doreen's basement and into a 1-bedroom apartment above the office. In October of 2024, I sent my 4th post-rejection birthday card to my father. $50 inside. The envelope came back 6 weeks later. My father's handwriting on the front. Return to sender, recipient refused. I opened the small wooden box on my kitchen counter where I kept stationery. I took out the rest of the cards. 11 of them? I burned them in the kitchen sink with a long match Doreen had given me for the propane stove. The smoke alarm didn't go off because I had taken the battery out the week before. I had been planning this. That was a fact I told no one for 6 months. In July of 2025, a woman named Frances Beaumont called my office. She introduced herself as a senior liaison at the NC Housing Coalition, who also worked the governor's office on housing innovation. She had been tracking Threshold for 2 years through a state housing case manager in Mecklenburg County. There was an award, she said, the Charlotte Region Community Impact Award, annually presented in October. The governor's office had agreed to attach an honorary citation. She didn't tell me the venue yet. She said, "Are you open to receiving it?" I said yes. "One more thing, Bethany. Be exactly who you are. That's the whole instruction." The same week, a reporter named Kate Pell from the Charlotte Observer emailed asking for a feature profile. I declined. Quietly, without explanation. I told no one in my family. I had stopped writing them birthday cards by then. August 14th, 2025, 9:23 at night. I was in the NODA office finishing the intake paperwork for a tenant named Marlene. Doreen had gone home. The HVAC unit was clicking through its summer cycle. The office smelled like the lemon oil I used on the desk. My phone buzzed on the desk. Lauren. We had not texted since 2022. No preface, a single photo attachment. The image was blurry, tilted, lit by what looked like the screen of another phone, taken in low light, a page of a brown leather notebook. Pencil writing in 2 narrow columns, 2 rows. Bethany H. Lauren H. 3 headers at the top of the page. Spiritual maturity, contribution to family name, stewardship of opportunity. The caption above the photo was 6 words. I'm sorry, he's been doing this since I was 14. I stared at the photo for 20 minutes. I did not respond to my sister for 3 days. August 17th, a coffee shop in Plaza Midwood. Lauren was 6 months pregnant. She wore an oversized cardigan over a long cotton dress. Her face was pale in a way that did not match the August heat. She set her phone on the table screen up. She did not order coffee. She swiped through 11 photos. The notebook was a quarterly ledger my father had maintained since 2003. That was the year Lauren turned 14. Each quarter, he had scored both of us across 3 columns. Lauren's scores were always higher than mine. By 2014, mine had begun to slip in the spiritual maturity column. By 2018, the gap was structural. She turned to the photo from the 3rd quarter of 2021. My row, 3rd column, in pencil. Stewardship, not currently a guest of this house. I read the line 3 times. The 3rd time, I put my hands flat on the table because they were not behaving the way I needed them to. Lauren said she had known about the notebook for 6 years. She had seen it the first time when she was 28, when her father showed it to Cole as part of a household ledger conversation before the engagement. She had said nothing. She had benefited from her column. She was here now because she had found something stapled inside the back cover the week before. She swiped to the next photo. It was my mother's handwriting. It had a date. The script was on a single sheet of typing paper. Patricia had stapled it to the inside back cover of the ledger. The date was August 2021, 3 months before I called from the Walmart parking lot. The title at the top was typed in a serif font. Household Communication, Hospitality Refusal Variants. Below it, 3 variants, numbered. Variant 3 was highlighted in yellow. A header in my mother's handwriting used when Bethany requests overnight stay. The script beneath it was typed. We're remodeling right now. We can't have guests. A handwritten note in the margin. In my mother's hand. Pause 2 seconds. Soft tone. Do not elaborate. I read it once. I did not read it twice. I looked at my sister across the table. Lauren was crying without sound. The cardigan was pulled tight across her belly. She was 24 weeks pregnant. I asked her, finally, the only question that mattered. Why are you showing me this now? She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. Because I'm having a daughter, and I will not raise her where I was raised. I took copies of every photo Lauren had. I emailed them to myself. I emailed a second copy to Doreen. I did not say what I would do with them. I did not know yet. If you're watching this and your gut already told you the rejection was rehearsed, drop a comment with one word. Script. I want to know who saw it before I did. And stay with me, because what I did next was not what they expected. August 27th, 2025. An email from Lauren landed in my inbox at 4 p.m. She had forwarded a message from my mother. My mother had CC'd my father. The subject line read, Convention Center Gala, October 18th. The body was 3 sentences. We thought you'd want to know. Lauren has been named Realtor of the Year, Carolinas Region. The gala is October 18th at the Convention Center. We have a table. You're welcome to come if you can dress appropriately. I read the last clause twice. I forwarded the email to Doreen without comment. Doreen read it. Doreen called Frances Beaumont. I did not know Doreen had Frances Beaumont's number. The first voicemail came on Sunday at 9 a.m. Sweetheart, your mother told me about the gala. We need to talk before you come. The second voicemail came on Sunday at 8 p.m. Bethany, this is your father. If you intend to come, please call me first. The third voicemail came on Monday at 11. Bethany, there are some things about the family that we need to be careful about saying in public. Please, call. I saved all 3. I learned later from Doreen's cousin's wife, who had it from a deacon's wife at First Baptist, that my father had asked Pastor Aldridge that same Sunday afternoon to drive out to my office and talk sense to me. Pastor Aldridge had said no. My father had not asked about my life in 4 years. The fourth message would have been about reputation. I had never been worth a phone call. I was now. September 8th, 2025. The conference room at the NODA office. Frances Beaumont sat at the head of the table in a navy blazer with a manila folder open in front of her. Doreen sat to my left. Yvette sat across from me. Frances slid 2 pages out of the folder. The Charlotte Regional Realtor Association presented the Community Impact Award annually at their Fall Gala. The award had been a joint program with the NC Housing Coalition for 6 years. The governor's office attached an honorary citation in years where the recipient's work intersected with state housing priorities. This year, the recipient was me. Frances had been waiting since July to tell me the venue. It's the same gala your sister is being honored at, Bethany. October 18th, Convention Center. I sat with that for a moment. I said, I want to buy a full table. 8 seats. I'll choose who sits there. Doreen began drafting names on a yellow legal pad. Yvette's name was first. I made one call that Tuesday. I called the convention center. I wrote a check for $8,500. I picked table 19. My family did not know there was a second award being given that night. I would not tell them. September 15th. I drove the 165 miles to Raleigh on I-85. The first time I had left Mecklenburg County in 4 years. I met Frances Beaumont in person at the NC Housing Coalition office on Hillsborough Street. She had drafted the citation language. She read it to me across a small conference table with a window that looked out at the state capitol grounds. The phrase I keep, the one that became the spine of the night, was hers, the architect of dignity in displacement. She asked if I wanted the full citation read at the gala. I said yes. She asked if I wanted to speak. 2 minutes, I'll write it. She asked about media coverage. I told her 3. Charlotte Observer, WBTV, Spectrum News 1. Whoever she would send for state coverage. She wrote each one down. She did not look up. Then she did. Be exactly who you are, Bethany. That's the whole instruction. I drove home in the dark. I did not write the speech that night. I would write it 5 days before the gala. I would write it once and not revise it, September 20th through October 10th. Doreen and I divided a list of 43 names into 2 columns. The first column was 8, women I wanted at table 19. Doreen, Yvette, Carla, Marlene, Annette, Charisse, Patty, and 1 empty seat we left open for the woman who hasn't moved in yet. The second column was 35. Current and former threshold tenants. Spread across 5 satellite tables I bought at the back of the room, Doreen hand-delivered every invitation in a heavy cream envelope. Inside each envelope, a printed ticket, a hand-signed note from me, and bus or rideshare instructions for women who didn't drive at night. The note read, "Wear what makes you feel like yourself. Sit anywhere you choose. No speeches asked of you." 43 envelopes, 43 yeses. Not one woman asked me what kind of event it was. October 17th, a Friday. Charlotte Magazine released its November issue at every newsstand in the city. The cover photograph showed me standing in the doorway of the Hidden Valley Bungalow. The first house. Yvette had moved out the year before into a condo of her own. The doorway was framed by the porch light. I had installed myself in the spring of 2022. The headline ran across the bottom in clean serif type. The Threshold Woman, quietly building Charlotte's other real estate empire. By Saturday morning, my mother had received 2 phone calls from women at First Baptist about the magazine. I learned this later from Doreen, who learned it from Doreen's cousin, who lived 2 blocks from my parents. My mother's response on both calls was the same. "That can't be our Bethany. The magazine's gotten loose lately." My father did not read what he called glossy press. Lauren had received an advance copy of the full convention center program 3 days before the gala. The program listed me on page 4 in a 9-point serif font. Community Impact Award, Bethany Hollister, Threshold Holdings, LLC. Lauren did not tell our parents. By Saturday evening, my parents had decided the magazine was a mistake. They did not check page 4 of the program. October 18th, 6:30 in the evening. Charlotte Convention Center, Crown Ballroom. I wore a dark green dress and no jewelry except my grandmother's small gold cross, which I had not worn since 2019. I had picked it up out of the velvet box at 4 in the afternoon and held it for a long minute before fastening the clasp. My grandmother had died in 1998. She had not lived to see the Sunday table assign me to the draft seat. I'm not sure if she would have let it. The lobby smelled like the warm bread they served at the head tables, and the perfume 200 women had reapplied in the last 15 minutes. Lauren intercepted me in the lobby. She wore burgundy. She wore the rose gold pendant Cole had given her at the wedding. She glanced at the small clutch I was carrying, as if she expected a paper to be visible through the seam. "Mom said you can sit with us if you behave. Please don't bring up anything from before." "Thank you, Lauren. I'm seated already." I walked past her to aisle 19, table 19. Doreen was already there. So were Yvette, Carla, Marlene, Annette, Charisse, Patty. The empty chair stayed empty. Earl saw me from his table. He held my eye for 2 seconds. I did not hold his. 7:45. Lauren won Realtor of the Year, Carolinas Region. She rose from her chair to a standing ovation from the Realtor Association tables. Her speech was 8 minutes long. She thanked her broker. She thanked her clients. She thanked Patricia by name. She thanked Earl by name. She did not thank me. She did not mention me. She included one line, near the end, that I would replay later. I want to acknowledge the parts of our family that have struggled, and remind us that real homes are built where parents step in. Earl applauded. Patricia dabbed her eyes with the corner of a cloth napkin. Doreen, at table 19, did not move. Yvette glanced at me across the centerpiece. I had not moved either. I was reading the program. I had turned to page 4. The Master of Ceremonies returned to the podium. He thanked the Realtor Association. He thanked the sponsors. He paused for half a second longer than the pacing of the evening had taught the room to expect. Before we close tonight, we have one more recognition. 8:14. Frances Beaumont walked from the back of the room to the stage. She wore a charcoal pantsuit. She carried a single folded page. She did not have notes on a phone or a tablet. She unfolded the page at the podium. She looked out at the room. Then she read, Bethany Hollister of Threshold Holdings, LLC, recognized this evening with the Charlotte Region Community Impact Award. The architect of dignity in displacement, the founder of 14 homes across our state, the woman who turned 19 nights in a car into shelter for 43 of our neighbors. The room was quiet for 4 full seconds. Doreen stood first. Yvette stood second. Carla, Marlene, Annette, Charisse, Patty rose together at table 19. Then, from the back of the room, in pairs, in threes, in slow synchrony from 5 tables I had bought 8 weeks earlier, 35 more women stood. 43 women on their feet before any clapping began. Earl turned in his chair. Patricia clutched the table edge. Lauren, I noted this, closed her eyes once. The applause came 8 seconds later from the rest of the room. I walked up aisle 19. I did not look at my father's table. I had practiced not looking. 8:17. I stood at the podium for the length of 2 slow breaths. Thank you, Frances. The work is the work of 43 women. I want you to hear their names. I read them in the order they had moved into Threshold. Yvette, Doreen, Carla, Marlene, Annette, Charisse, Patty, Renee, Joyce, Tamika, Brenda, Helene, Sandra, Gail, Imani, Luann, Pearl, Tiffany, Rosalind, Vesta, Joanna, Tess, Margaret. I paused after the 23rd name. My hands were on the wooden lip of the podium. The lights were warmer than I had expected. Doreen, at table 19, leaned forward. She took a folded tissue from her clutch and placed it in my hand. She squeezed my wrist twice. She did not speak. I continued. Pauline, Vivian, Letty, Hattie, Cordelia, Maxine, Dora, Florence, Eileen, Beverly, Wanda, Geraldine, Faye, May, Adele, Lorraine, Estelle, Yvonne, Cleo, Ruth. I paused for one more breath. And one Earl, who taught me, 4 Novembers ago, what a closed door means. I built 14 of them open. The room sat silent for 3 seconds. The applause came in one wave and held for 53 seconds. I returned to table 19. Doreen poured my water. I drank it. I did not look at my father. I never looked at my father again. 20 minutes later, in the side hallway near the coat check, a man in a gray Sunday suit was waiting for me. Pastor Aldridge was 74 years old. His hands were larger than I had remembered. He held a single folded sheet of paper in his right hand. Bethany. I was invited tonight by the Housing Coalition. I sent them a letter about your work in 2024. I want you to have something. He held the page out. It was a photocopy of a letter. Typed, single page, dated June 4th, 2018, addressed to Earl Hollister. The first paragraph was 3 sentences. Earl, you showed me the records book on Tuesday. I want to say this plainly. A man does not rank his children. I did not read the rest in the hallway. He looked at me steadily. "Your father showed me the records book in 2018. I told him a man does not rank his children. He told me I was being soft. I should have spoken to you then. I am sorry I did not." I folded the page. I put it in my clutch. I said, "Pastor, thank you for the letter you sent the Housing Coalition." He nodded once. He walked back into the ballroom without another word. If you have a closed door in your family, or one you closed yourself for your own dignity, I want you to sit with that tonight. Not because they deserve forgiveness, because you deserve peace. There's a difference. The story isn't quite over. I drove home that night to the apartment above the NODA office. I parked the Subaru in my reserved space. I climbed the iron staircase on the side of the building. I let myself in. I left the lights off for a while. I sat in the kitchen chair by the window. I opened my clutch. I took out the photocopy of Pastor Aldridge's 2018 letter. I read all 4 paragraphs. The 4th paragraph was the one I would think about for the next 6 months. A house is not a sanctuary if it has columns for its children's worth. I folded the letter and put it in the kitchen drawer next to the postcards I kept from former tenants. I went to bed at 1 a.m. I did not call Lauren. I did not call Patricia. I did not call Earl. The lien on 3142 Providence Road was finalized on March 12, 2026. I learned this from Doreen, who heard it from her cousin, who lived 2 blocks from my parents. The reverse mortgage on the house had been taken out by Earl in 2020. The year, Doreen's cousin said, that Earl had loaned Lauren the down payment for her own real estate license preparation course and her first listing photography package. The reverse mortgage's required occupancy and tax provisions had been violated for the previous 14 months. The bank had moved through the federal HECM foreclosure protocol. Patricia had been listed as a non-borrowing spouse. There was no protection clause she had qualified for. The house was empty on March 13th. Patricia moved in with Lauren and Cole. Earl stayed in an extended stay hotel on Independence Boulevard for 16 nights. He did not call me from the hotel. He called me on April 14th. April 14th. 2:51 in the afternoon. I was in the NODA office. Doreen and Yvette were across the room interviewing a new tenant, Renee Mott, 51 years old, 6 months out from a medical debt cascade that had begun with a routine surgery and a denied claim. Renee was sitting in the leather chair we kept for intake. She had a manila folder in her lap. The folder had the soft creases of a folder that had been carried into many rooms. My cell phone rang on the desk. The screen read, "Dad." I let it ring 3 times. I picked up on the 4th. He had been crying for 2 minutes when I picked up. I could hear the catch in his breath before he managed his first full word. "Bethany." I did not say anything. "Sweetheart." The kitchen radio was not playing in the background. There was no kitchen. "Bethany, we have nowhere. Just a few weeks. Just to figure things out. Your mother is... Lauren's house is small with the baby. Bethany, sweetheart, just a few weeks." I waited until he had stopped. I said 3 words. "I have guests." I hung up. I did not call back. I did not listen to the 3 voicemails he left over the next 48 hours. I deleted them, one at a time, the following Monday morning. I walked back across the office to the intake chair. I sat down across from Renee Mott. She looked up. "Is everything all right, Miss Hollister?" "Yes, Renee. Everything is all right. Let's finish your paperwork. You have a home." 2 days later, on April 16th, I drove the Subaru to the Walmart on Independence Boulevard. I parked in the same darker corner near the cart corral, where the overhead light had been broken for 4.5 years, and where I had spent 19 nights at 35 years old. I sat in the car for 11 minutes. I did not cry. I had not prayed in 4 years by my own choice, and I did not pray. I watched the parking lot. In the spot 2 over, an older blue Buick was idling. A woman in a brown parka adjusted her side mirror. She glanced toward my windshield. She pretended she didn't see me. I pretended back. That was the kindness. I got out of the Subaru. I walked to the trunk. I took out a paper bag I'd packed that morning and a red plaid thermos I had bought 8 months earlier and never used. I walked to the driver's side of the blue Buick. I knocked softly on the window. The woman lowered it 3 inches. I said, "I work 3 blocks from here. I've sat where you're sitting. I made you breakfast, if you want it." She took the bag. She took the thermos. I walked back to my car. I drove east on Independence. The sun was over the bank where the Marriott used to be. I had work to do. If anyone has ever made you feel like a guest in your own life, there is a door somewhere. Build it open.